The Middle East is a playground. For the West, for the East, and for the governments ruling on that part of the map. Its people have witnessed more wars in half a century than any other region. If governments have spent so much time avoiding wars and dealing with their devastating consequences, the world would have been a better place. However, the illusion of victory by killing and domination by destruction still exists in the region and in the world, causing many people to flee. People who could have shaped the future of their countries, people who could have been successful and have a good future in their homeland, started to look for shelter. Most of them went to their neighboring countries. Nearly 6 million Syrian refugees have been registered in their neighboring countries, specifically in Jordan, Turkey, and Iraq, and there are tens of thousands of them who have not been registered anywhere. Since 2015, nearly 17.5 million people left Syria, Iraq, and Afghanistan. And a lot of them had one destination: Europe. Just in 2015, nearly 1.3 million people came to Europe to request asylum. This phenomenon is also known as the 2015 refugee crisis, caused many political changes in Europe. Countries alongside the Balkan route such as Hungary, Bulgaria, and Romania closed their border and technically shut down the Balkan route, which was the land route to Europe. Left hopeless and confused, refugees set foot on another path. Crossing the Aegean Sea is a dangerous way and the shortest route to the gateway of Europe through Greece. The sea stretches for a distance of 12 kilometers between Turkey and the island of Lesbos. Preparation for this dangerous journey begins in Turkey with buying life jackets. Most of the time, they are fake and filled with low-quality styrofoam, which is not waterproof. Many have lost their lives wearing one of them. The smugglers charge €1,000 per person. Refugees have no choice but to get into an inflatable boat, which is usually filled with 50 people. On the website of the Chinese online shop, Alibaba, a company advertised its boats as high-quality refugee boats. The inflatable boats, which are available for $800, are said to be particularly suitable for transporting refugees. Sadly, it was a profitable business. According to a report by Reuters, about 4,000 people are believed to have drowned in the Aegean during the 2015-16 crisis trying to reach Europe. But the sea is not their only enemy. In just 3 years, the Greek Coast Guard has stopped nearly 190,000 people from reaching the shore. It has also been blamed for the drowning of at least 2 migrants, and there are other allegations of illegal pushbacks. Often saved by NGOs, those who made it to shore after going through one horrible journey through the sea, are exhausted, tired but hopeful. They are happy because they finally reached Europe. But reaching Lesbos is just the beginning. To reach the registration center, they need to walk a distance of 55 kilometers for 11 hours. People on the island cannot give any help with transportation, even taxi drivers. Because it will be an act of human trafficking. Poor organization and lack of staff caused chaos and problems in the registration center from the very beginning. Refugees had to wait in a long line for their turn to enter the small registration center. It is clear to see that there was not enough space to handle almost 70 people per day. Sometimes even more. Even after their turns, things were not working properly. Moria was a military camp, but in 2015, when the refugee crisis began, it became the first refugee detention center on Lesbos. It covered 5 hectares of land and could accommodate 3,000 people. As time went on and more refugees showed up on the island, the camp expanded into 12 different zones, making it Europe's largest refugee camp with nearly 20,000 inhabitants. In May 2020, there were almost 1,900 visible tents around the camp. Filming and flying over with a drone was strictly prohibited, and what we have left are Google Earth satellite images, videos and documentation archived on the internet for public Comparing Zones 6 and 7 with other zones of the camp, an orderly arrangement of tents can be seen. These zones were built for families, and there should be special regulations for this purpose. According to UNHCR, regardless of the type of emergency shelter used, the following principles generally apply. Refugee shelters should be culturally and socially appropriate and familiar where possible. Blankets, mats, and tarpaulin must be provided as needed. A minimum of 3.5 square meters covered living space per person. The individual family shelter should always be preferred to communal accommodation as it provides the necessary privacy, psychological comfort, and emotional safety. But in Moria it was different. Most of the time, each family had to live in a cabin with 4 other families, which reduced the standard living space to less than 1 square meter. The same problem applied to the tents. Considering that almost 63% of the inhabitants were families, it is easy to see that the infrastructure of the camp was not even sufficient for half of the refugees. Important infrastructure facilities such as registration center, medical clinic, water storages, sanitation facilities, and food supply center were located inside the main camp. For this reason, in addition to the residents of the main camp, many people who had settled in the vicinity of it had to go to it to meet their daily needs. Due to the fact that filming was banned in the camp, parts of the camp were reconstructed in this video by using videos that were secretly taken by people or documented by official news agencies. The high population density, as well as the lack of sufficient facilities, led to serious health and hygiene problems. And the lack of standardized accommodation for asylum seekers and also their quarantine during the corona pandemic led to a humanitarian disaster. Based on this video made by the user, Urban Lad, on YouTube, there were only 22 stationary toilets, and the rest were portable toilet cabins. According to the NGO, RSA, inside the main camp, there were 90 toilets and 90 showers. Outside in the overflow, there were less than 30, and attention has not been paid to access for people with special needs. That means one toilet corresponds to 200 people and a shower for 506 people. Based on the UNHCR Handbook on Emergency Sanitation Standards, for post-emergency situations, the ratio is 1 toilet per 20 persons and a shower per 50. The lack of a sewage system and the absence of daily garbage disposal made the portable toilets completely unusable. In addition, daily power outages disrupted the water supply system. Refugees were forced to use water bottles or diapers. Next to this unfortunate situation, still, some of them were engaged in small businesses. From selling fruit to selling a cottage or a tent. From selling charging cables and Bluetooth speakers to even giving haircuts in a small barbershop. The Iranian barber who worked in this place used simple materials to build his small business. Plastic coverings and wood. Not only him but also many other people were using the branches of the olive trees around Moria to set up their tents. According to the authorities of Lesbos, in just 3 years, almost 5,000 olive trees, which were part of the heritage of the island, were cut down. Many of the inhabitants had to build up their own shelter. Even though they were using cheap materials, it was hard and expensive to provide them in the camp. Wooden pallets and blankets for the floor, plastic covering for the walls, and bottle caps and nails to hold everything in position. This simple package has cost around 130 to 150 euros. But this shelter cannot be considered as a standard one. This video by Eric Maddox shows a normal day in the overflow part of the camp. Based on the position of the building in the background and matching it to one of the aerial images, we can determine the approximate location where he filmed this video. What this video and also other footages from the overflow have in common will be part of the refugees' collective memories. The catastrophic condition in which they live. Some of them lived in this situation for 2 years, waiting for European countries to decide whether to accept them or hand them the rejection letter. Since there was no solution in sight and they were trapped in a so-called shelter, many children faced psychological problems. Many women who had no accompaniment had to manage their daily lives in fear of physical and emotional threats. Many families were separated because reunion was not possible, due to legal reasons. The people who lived there lost contact with the world and were forgotten somewhere on the island of Lesbos. On the coast of the island, tourists were probably more concerned with the corona and how they should probably go into quarantine for a while when they returned to their home country after a vacation on the island. Moria, on the other hand, has always been in quarantine. Even though Lesbos is part of Europe, the European Convention on Human Rights didn't seem to apply to this place. A camp where young people desperately tried to kill themselves with pills or knives. This declaration should have applied to a camp with 20,000 inhabitants. It should have applied where there was no soap to be found and the showers were only open 2.5 hours a day. It should have applied because people's vision of a better life in the future was as big as the blue plastic bag they wore on their heads. Where life has become the art of survival. In recent years, the European Union has failed to find a common policy for the distribution of asylum seekers among its member states, and still, no possible solution is in sight. During these dark days, it's a good time to ask ourselves a question.
예.